let's get into the NFC. We finished the AFC and dropped those on our Twitter. If you want to go check them out, all of our plays are there. We're moving into the NFC East. It is Thursday. The Lions and the Chiefs are about to come on, so we're going to move a little quickly through these. So let's start off with the Cowboys. It's set at, I'm seeing on WinBet, it's set at over 10 is minus 120. Under 10 is plus 105. Does anybody have the odds for the division?
Plus 175.
175.
Okay, bet. Hey, let's go. Grayson, you got any plays on the Cowboys this year?
Yeah, I've got the plus 175. I think
Okay.
I've seen just too many things about how this division is kind of rotates in the circle of whatever you want to call it. It's really tough to repeat. I think the Eagles are ultimately the better team, but a lot can happen over a now 17-game season. I think they had a lot of things go their way, injury and schedule-wise, last year. I think these two teams are closer than last year may have indicated. I think the difference in price, the Eagles sit at minus 115 to take the division home. I think there's just a little bit of value on Dallas. Now, with Jerry Jones still living and breathing, it might not happen. But Zeke is out of the building. Pollard is finally going to be unleashed. CeeDee Lamb's always been one of the better receivers in the NFL, held back by whoever comes in for Dak when he gets hurt. But I think if we get a full season from Dak, or at least something closer than last season, he was hurt in the opener. That I think that this Dallas team can do a lot. I don't know about the win total. I'm going to kind of hedge my bet a little bit with another win total, but I like Dallas to come out of the NFC East on top at plus 175.
Yeah, how you feeling, Jack?
Yeah, that's just not going to happen. And I'm taking Eagles minus 115. The Cowboys, we know that they're the same team every year. Dak is going to win you 10 to 11 games, and then they lose first round of playoffs. So maybe I like the playoff odds at minus 210, but they ain't winning the division. I feel like the Eagles, like we were talking about earlier, they really didn't lose much. They only got better. Yeah, they lost Miles Sanders. They replaced him with DeAndre Swift, but I think will be better suited in this offense than he was in Detroit. You bring back, your two top receivers. I feel like this team is you bring in Jalen Carter from Georgia. You bring in Nolan Smith from Georgia. I feel like this defense is Georgia 2.0. I feel like they only got better. Their strength of schedule is 10th easiest out of the league. And they open their season up. It's pretty decent, and they also end their season pretty easy. So I feel like they can get rolling. And even if they maybe catch a losing streak late, they end Seattle Giants, Arizona Giants. So
yeah,
I kind of like this. I'm sprinkling just to make this more fun because I don't like this division. I'm sprinkling Eagles plus 800 Super Bowl odds to make the Super Bowl because I feel like there's only maybe one other team that can compete with them. We'll talk about them obviously later, and then potentially, if Will Anderson gets hurt, Jalen Carter, defensive rookie of the year, at plus 500.
Okay. Going back on the Cowboys real quick. They were 12-5 last year, and that's with Dak throwing 15 interceptions. I don't know if what we've seen from him in training camp and preseason is enough for me to think that he doesn't throw. I kind of like his over 13.5, but I'm not going to touch it, honestly. I don't really have a play for the Cowboys. I think, like Jack said, they are who they are. Like, they're going to win 10 to 11 games, usually, probably make the playoffs. But I feel like this is a division in the NFC where you could get 3 playoff teams, and I'll touch on that later. But I don't have any play. I think the 10 is right there at the mark.
That's my fault. Totally forgot. We were talking about the Cowboys for a second. That's all me.
It's okay. Do you have anything for the Cowboys?
No, I don't like them. The only thing I like about them is maybe the minus 210 playoff odds. But other than that, like we said, it's a tough division to really hit anything on.
Yeah. So moving into where Jack kind of already took us with the Eagles, I do like them to win the division. Kind of like you said, like they only got better. I don't like taking a minus 115 odds as a NFL future. So I would think of putting them with somebody like the Jags or somebody where I'm a little more confident in them winning the division. So like as a parlay piece, but I do have them winning the division. They don't have a terribly hard schedule. I mean, like you said, they lost Miles Sanders, but they replaced him with DeAndre Swift and also Rashad Penny. I think that they're just set up to win over the long haul. But they're sitting at 11.5 win total. And like Grayson said, minus 115 to win. So we already got Jack's thoughts here. He's picking them to win the division. Are you going to take anything with the win total there before we go to Grayson?
It's 11.5. I don't know. I kind of like them push because they play 6 solid teams. So like that would kind of make or break that 11.5. They play Minnesota, Miami, the Jets, and then they do a 3-game stretch against KC, Buffalo, and San Fran.
Yeah,
so
that's rough.
That's a tough push for me.
Yeah. So Grayson, how you feeling? I do kind of agree with your analogy of like this is like a Ferris wheel. Like every year, it just kind of like rotates to the next team. So it's kind of hard for me to feel confident in the Eagles here. But what are you thinking with them?
In lieu of the division profit minus 115, the win total is 11.5, like you mentioned. I saw plus 104 on FanDuel about 20 minutes ago. So I'm assuming that still holds up. I'm going to take that because I think it will take 12 wins to win this division, like it did last year. We saw Dallas get to 12-5, and they were the runner-ups. We saw some Minshew magic late for the Eagles, unfortunately, so they could have had even more wins. But I think that the likelihood of neither of those two things happening is very, very slim, and we could very well see, two 12-win teams, a 13 and a 12. If the Eagles falter and win 10 games, then the Cowboys could take the division at 11-6 or again at 12-5. So I think the split, I don't mind, take a little profit if the Eagles come out of those two bets. But, I think there's a lot more scenarios where I could actually potentially hit both and hit neither. I think these are clearly the two teams capable of winning the division, barring some sort of Brian Daboll just absolute masterclass, which over a 17-game season, I don't think is possible. They may be the best team in the division for a month, especially as Philly goes through a gauntlet, like we mentioned, schedule-wise, with a lot of Super Bowl contenders lined up in succession. But yeah, like I mentioned with the Cowboys division pick, I'm kind of hedged my bet just a touch, still at plus money, which I like a lot. You can have to line shop to find that more than a couple places, I'd imagine. But yeah, I'll take the Eagles to get to 12 wins at plus 104.
Nice. I like that. So moving on, you kind of touched on Daboll. We're moving on to the Giants. I see it here. It is set at 7.5 win total. I personally am going to hammer the over. I like the Giants this year. I think, they were 9-7 last year. I understand Eagles and Cowboys. I'm not as high on the Cowboys. I think that they can split. Honestly, they probably split with everybody splits in this division typically. Not very rarely do you see a team go 0-2 against teams in this division, but I do like them to get to at least 8. But there was a pivot. We were talking about this before the show. I haven't found it on FanDuel yet, but when I do, I will post it with the clips. Somebody was on the radio was talking about there is a bet for the Giants to make the playoffs as a wild card team, plus 380. I love that. I do think they are a playoff team, and I'm pretty sure their playoff odds is plus 175 maybe was the last time I seen it. So go ahead.
That bet is the Giants to make it as a wild card is plus 300 on BetMGM.
Okay, plus 300 on BetMGM. It's still 3-1. I feel like that is the perfect spot for this because I don't see the Giants winning the division, but I do see them winning enough games to make the playoffs. So I'm going to take the Giants over 7.5 here and plus 300 to make the playoffs as a wild card. Jack, how you feeling on this one? Got any plays?
I kind of agree with both your takes. I think they get to at least 8 wins. Their strength schedule isn't too bad. They do have some outlier games. And I do like their odds to make the playoffs just because of how weak the NFC is this year outside of, your obvious division winners. We'll talk about it later, but the NFC South, probably no one else. NFC West, probably no one else. And the NFC North, maybe, you're looking at Minnesota, Detroit, Chicago to face against, give or take, Dallas and Giants to make those wild card spots. So I like those odds. Outside of that, there's not many more plays. I don't think the Giants win the division at all. I feel like, unlike you said, you're more higher on the Giants than I am, but I think they're the third best team in this division, but I think they can do enough to make the playoffs at maybe the 8 or 9 win mark.
Yeah. What about you, Grayson?
Yeah, I would definitely lean towards the over 7.5. It's only at -104, and we've mentioned a couple really badly juiced win totals. That one's really palatable. 4 cents is pretty much nothing, honestly, compared to some of these -130s and all this that we've seen hung up on the board. The playoff thing, I don't know. I feel like you put 6 teams in a hat, you pull 2 out after that. A team like Dallas or Philadelphia, whoever comes out on the wrong side of the coin flip for the division, that's going to be a strong first wild card. And then I feel like there's going to be a lot of teams in the mix. Seattle, you'd see 2 or 3 from the NFC North. I think that, teams that aren't going to challenge their divisions because of the teams above them, the true Super Bowl contenders. But I just think that I could see them being the odd man out in the playoffs, and I would really hate to lose a bet that I was right on as far as being high on a team. If they do win 8 or 9 games and they do lose like on a 4th tiebreaker. So I'd rather play it a bit safer, just with, hoping you see another full season from Saquon. He got his money at least for a year, so that should help him in that department, getting his mind right for the season. So yeah, I'll take over 7.5 -104, but I'm a bit more skeptical on the playoff odds just because of how chaotic these NFL wildcard races can be, even with that 3rd slot.
Yeah, that's a fair point, especially with thinking of that. My thought process is kind of like Jack's, though. Unless somebody in the NFC South just goes crazy, I feel like the NFC South winner is going to be below 500 probably. So I don't see the extra team coming from there. A lot of people are actually predicting some regression from Geno. Unfortunately, my guy, love you. But so you could possibly get the Seahawks coming out of there. The only other competition will be, which we're going to get into later, is probably the NFC North, which should be a pretty competitive division this year. But let's finish up the NFC South. The Commanders, 6.5 win total. I don't personally have a play on this, so I'm not going to even talk about it. I do kind of like Sam Howell, but I don't really know how to feel towards them. So either of you guys have a play on them?
Yeah, scratch everything I said about the Eagles. Commanders plus 1,800. Hammer that shit. Just kidding. No, I like you. I don't have any plays. I feel like the Commanders have the hardest strength schedule in this division, which only hurts them. I think they're a few pieces away from contending in this division because we all know this division, like Grayson said, it's anyone's division any time of the year. But I just think this year it's not in the Commanders' favor.
That's fair.
Yeah, I just think I wish I could look into a crystal ball and see if they decide to tank for a quarterback or not. I don't know if Howell's going to do well enough to talk them out of that. And if they do go with the downward spiral thing, I don't think Ron Rivera survives that, and that's going to be a midseason move potentially. I've seen people floating his odds for first coach fired, which, fair or not, with the QB class coming in, teams are going to just tank. And it's going to be pretty blatant, pretty obvious. There's kind of like the NBA, the NFL is a lottery. It is the worst team gets the first pick. And even with the Twitter rumors of Caleb Williams deciding to stay in school, I don't believe that for a second, honestly. Even pulling something like an Eli Manning happens once every 20 years. So I just don't see it happening, to be honest. So with that in mind, and just thinking that this is a team just teetering on the brink of literally purposely losing, like 10 games in a row. We saw the Bears do it last year. I don't think they did it necessarily as on purpose. They have their QB, they have their guy. They just had a lot of other things go wrong for them. But we could see tailing off of that magnitude if they decide that they would rather pick a QB in the top 5 picks next year than try and develop Howell. They'd rather do it with an offensive coach, not Ron Rivera. So there's too many unknowns, and the team, like we've said, is not going to challenge the division. You could add a 0 to the division odds. I still wouldn't take it. I just think they're probably 5-1 to make the playoffs. I have no interest in that either. I just think that, they have talented players, not enough to make any kind of noise, though. And I don't really want to take an under because I think it's some rooting at that point for them to lose on purpose. So
yeah.
Let me add something. The Commanders take the actual best UNC quarterback. They take Drake May next year.
Okay.
They may be in prime position too.
Yeah,
they choose to position
they probably
themselves.
will be. I'm kind of with you guys. They also have, You got to think somehow that getting some of his first real time out there, they have like one of the worst ranked O-line. So not really set up for success. Who knows what the defense is going to look like? I'm not a Ron Rivera fan. I like him.
Why is
but
that?
As a Panthers
Enlighten
fan,
us, yeah.
I'm just not. I just he can take Kyle Allen like he did and go to Washington. Like all of his outside of Cam Newton, because Cam Newton saved his freaking career basically. He had no. We don't need to talk about it. Whatever. But there's the NFC East. I was thinking of possibly talking about a correct order, but I don't even want to mess with those top 3 teams.
I do have a crazy one for this division. It's not exact order, but I was flipping through the team specials. Cowboys to score a touchdown in every game, plus 135. I could absolutely see it happening. The Eagles is minus 170. And like I mentioned with the division decision, I don't know if they're that much further off. I think Zeke may be addition by subtraction, at least in the backfield, get some clarity there. Pollard's certainly talented enough to lead a backfield. That's really banking on a lot of Cowboys staying healthy, especially up in front of Dak. Obviously, Dak's going to be the keystone player, essentially, because if he goes down, then this bet's going to lose that next game probably, especially if they get in these tough division matchups. Later in the year, it gets a little colder. So that would be my exotic bet. And I forgot about it earlier, but Micah Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year, plus 450. He's the favorite, which I hate doing, but he's so talented. I would feel dumb not taking a stab on this for like half a unit just to see, if he plays his potential. There's not very many guys that can do much about that. I mean, Nick Bosa, healthy, that's great. There's other names certainly, and their odds reflect that right up there with him. But, just going off my Cowboys optimism, which always ends the same way, like Jack said earlier, I'll still throw half a unit on Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year, plus 450.
Nice. I like that. Did you say it was to score a touchdown or a rush touchdown in every game?
Any touchdown.
Any touchdown.
Yeah,
I'm hammering that.
At plus odds. I
right.
like that.
And it's minus 170 for Philly, which I get it being less, but not, the $1.40, whatever that comes out to math-wise.
And I mean,
I'm going to 100 units on that shit.
Yeah, that like I don't know if I'd go that much, but but you got to think, like, even when Dak went down, Cooper Rush came in and looked really good last year.
They were winning games. Yeah,
they were.
And they got Trey Lance.
And they got Trey Lance, which I
may cash out if he comes in. Honestly.
I stashed on my dynasty team just for when Dak Prescott has 20 interceptions in 10 games. I'm just saying.
So you put money on Dak throwing 20 interceptions in 10 games?
No, but
the prop was 13. So
I'll put money
that
on.
Might take a month.
I would kind of like. I'm not gonna bet it, and I said it earlier.
Dak is plus 1,000 to throw the most interceptions.
But I do think him or Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think they're tied, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the same odds. The only person who has a higher odd is Jordan Love.
Oh.
At plus 1,200.
Well,